Dehydrating Food. These are two dehydrators. This one's more of a bulk one. It's an old American-made one, and you can dry meat with these things and everything like that too. You don't have to have a big one. And so this is the way they work. Every dehydrator is the same. It has two elements. It has a fan, and it has a heating element. And the fan blows the heat out through holes, like this is vented through this. And this one, so you have these. These are the best ones to get, not necessarily square, sometimes they're round, but you want to be able to take these off and wash them easier. And you also, there's sometimes where you have things that are kind of goopy, like pineapple, for when you have pineapple. With pineapple, you don't want really big holes, and if you want to chop up onions and do onions, you don't want really big holes. So it's nice to have, this is actually a pretty good meat. This covers almost everything. And then there's a special kind of rubber sheet that you can do if you're going to do leathers, like shoe leather and stuff like that, right? I'm not shoe leather. Did I say shoe leather?
Yeah.
Not shoe leather.
Apple leather?
Apple leather, fruit leathers, things like that. So those are the dehydrators. They're very simple. This one, I'll show you the controls. This one's nice because it has a timer and a heat control. Timer's nice because if you're going to go to bed, otherwise you go to bed and you have to turn it down to almost zero because you don't want them to be like dried out in the morning. So the timer's nice. This one doesn't have a timer. For that one, if I were going to sleep, I would probably just have to turn it down way low, just so that it doesn't get drier than I want. So let's go ahead. Dehydrating food. Question is what to dehydrate, right? So if you garden, you'll find that you'll almost always have leftovers, right? Anyone who gardens and wants to store their stuff, they should either can it or dehydrate it, or otherwise they're just giving it away to all their neighbors, which is not a bad thing either. So I actually have a garden area. I live in a townhome here, but I have a garden out in Luray, a property, and I'm just building a big garden out there. And for me, it's going to be really important to can, and I dehydrate, and I freeze, and I do things like that. But the other thing to do is when something's actually in season, they're really cheap and in bulk. And that's the time to bring out your canner or your bottler or a pressure canner or your bottler. Some people freeze dry stuff. That's an expensive equipment, but it's very, very nice if you want to get one of those. You can actually buy that for your home. So get it in bulk. I was going to do jalapenos, so I went and got jalapenos, but they were like in bulk at Walmart, and they were just cheap because they were in season. That's when they're in season. That means you probably are getting it closer to home. It's freshest, and that's probably the best time to eat it. But it's the best time to buy it, and you can buy it in bulk for very cheap, and you can get enough for the next year and a half easily right then. And you store it up, you never have to buy again. Why not go buy jalapenos once? Now, I wanted to make cowboy candy, which is a kind of a sweet jalapeno thing. I really like jalapenos. I decided to can those. I didn't actually dry them. And then I went back and did other things. So what can you dehydrate? Really, almost anything, really, other than like lettuces and stuff. But herbs, meats, fruits, fruit leathers, vegetables, anything you want, spices, anything like that. And there's different ways to do it. So I started with cherry tomatoes. Anything you're going to want to wash any food because it's raw. You're not cooking this. If you're pressure canning it, I almost wouldn't bother because nothing's going to survive pressure canning. These are raw foods. If you're going to dehydrate, you want them to be clean. So some people will throw all their apples in dish soap and wash them with soap. I'm not a big fan of that. I like to use vinegar and water. And I think that's healthy and good and clean and doesn't leave any residue, and I'm not getting soap in there. So I rinse them out in the vinegar and water. Cherry tomatoes, I like to slice in half. Anytime you're dehydrating, you kind of are thinking about how thick something is to be able to dry out, right? Cherry tomato, a half is a good one. It takes a long time to do cherry tomatoes. Some people like to kind of press out a little bit of the water on these. I'd rather not. I don't want to lose anything. I'd like to keep it and just dry a little longer. So there's all my cherry tomatoes sliced up in half, laid out on one of these sheets right here. And it's best to kind of have them face up with cherry tomatoes, just so you know. First of all, you turn it down. It's a little goopy on the surface. It'll work, but you're also everything that sticks to the surface you've lost. It's food that's going to be washed away if you wash these afterwards. So it's best to turn them up, and they dry better that way if you're doing cherry tomatoes. If you want to, you can salt them. You don't have to. I liked to, so I salted mine down and makes them a little more flavorful. I had some extra space, so I threw in some peppers from my garden. And then because cherry tomatoes take a lot longer, I ruined them, and so I threw them away. But that's them going into the machine here. And what I like to do is and you're going to talk about these little things right here. You get them on, they're oxygen absorbers, and you throw them in, and even a jar like this with that much space, if you put the lid on with a new one, see that? You can hear that? You will not be able to do that. It will seal it. Even with that, that's actually a very little amount of space for one of these packets to handle. The packets come, and you'll probably talk more about this, in very different varieties. Some will take out a lot more air, some will take out less air, because sometimes you don't want to take out that much. But so I've unpacked this one, but within a couple hours after putting this in, it was already sealed. So that means it'll store forever, and you can use any bottle. I never throw bottles away, by the way. So I'm going to pass these around. You can taste one if you want. So the next thing I did was blueberries. Same thing, rinsed them in the vinegar water, and I just kept the same water. But you want to, and you're like, well, what kind of vinegar water? How much to put in? I don't know. Put some vinegar in the water, and you can kind of tell. Does it smell a little bit, like it's cleaning? I rinsed them out, and with blueberries, you want to be really gentle. When they're ripe, they're gentle, so handle them very carefully. Here, I'm straining them out nicely. Also, all through that process with blueberries, there's going to be a few with the stems in them still. Those aren't going to dehydrate very well. Just get rid of them and just pick them off. And most of them don't have it. There's just a few. So in the cleaning and in the processing, in putting them on the trays, you're going to find them. It's harder to take them off after they're dry. So it's just a good time to spend the time to do that. So I dried those in the same machine, and that's what they look like when they're done. And the same thing, put them in a jar with one of these little things. And this one, I opened this to actually make, but I opened this to make some pancakes, because I was trying to figure out, do you need to soak the blueberries before you make the pancakes and things like that. And so I just did the basic pancake mix with the water, put in the blueberries, and I did not wait. I just went ahead and cooked them and let the steam of the cooking do its job. And just made one pancake just to test, and they were fine. I did not need to do any special hydrating. They were a little teeny bit chewy in a really good way, not like a raisin. They were. If I would have just soaked them in a little teeny bit of hot water beforehand, they probably would have been perfectly like a normal blueberry. But I actually didn't need that. I liked the way they were. They weren't chewy, they were just a little bit of give. I was pretty happy with that experience. Then I decided to do pineapple, which is the best thing in the world to dehydrate because it's basically candy. Some people will do pineapple and mix it with a sugar water and a lemon water. They'll do the lemon water so that it doesn't turn brown, and they'll do the sugar to make it sweeter. You do not need to do sugar water. Yeah, so what I did was I just got the containers of cut pineapple at Walmart. I just got a thing of that. And so that doesn't look like much, but that's a full container of pineapple kind of in a bowl that kind of comes down like this. What I did was I sliced them thinner, because pineapple doesn't dehydrate fast, right? So I just cut them thinner until they were all about cut in half, placed them out on the thing. They went in with the tomatoes. You can see the little tomatoes up in there. I haven't opened this one. You can see it's already sealed. See it vacuum packed. So I'm going to go ahead and eat one of those. So definitely try some of this. And this is with no sugar. I did not dip them in lemon juice either. So they would be more of a yellow color probably, but it doesn't bother me. It just seems unnecessary for pineapple. Here's the controllers on this dehydrator. The color coding's not very good, but I love the timer on that one. This is actually Nicole's dehydrator. This one's mine.
Wait, JJ, have you ever used an air fryer?
Yeah, they're fabulous. Not for this, but you could. I hadn't even thought of that. I'd definitely use a low setting, but yeah. That's really good. And you can use your oven for any of this, to dehydrate the tomatoes, to do pineapple. You don't have to. If you have heat, you can do it. They used to just do it in the sun, right? Next I did onions. I chose a good Vidalia onions. I like Vidalia onions. They're a little bit sweeter. They're not as pungent as some onions. So here, this is basically what you're going to see is basically 7 onions. So what I did is I cut off the ends. Hang on, I'm hitting the wrong button. Cut off the ends. This is just a way I really like to do it, okay? You can chop up onions in your whatever, but I cut off the ends, keep the ends, don't throw anything away here, and then cut it in a way to make spirals. You want the full circles. That's just what I recommend, okay, for canning. I cut it by you can use one of those mandolins and get your perfect slices, but it's an onion, you have a knife. It was not very hard to go ahead and get all these onion rings out of it like that. I went pretty thin. And notice I have something where I'm keeping all of everything that I've cut off the onion. I'm not going to throw that away. That would be sinful in my perspective. So there's your onions. That's about how thick they are. I separate them out, right, because I don't want a full-fleshed ring, a full circle. So I separated them out. You need to have some boiling water going, and they'll dehydrate better if you blanch them. Some people actually boil them. I just more blanched them, but I put them in, and then the boil went away, so I kept them in until the boil came back. And they got a little bit translucent, like a couple minutes. Some people go for a little longer. I don't recommend going for longer. I want as much onion in my onions as you can get, and they dehydrated perfectly well. So that's them. I pulled them out. I did not pour out the water. That water is gold. Don't pour out that water. I strained them out, as you can see I did here, and then I laid them out. Do not have to have everyone separate. They can be overlapping a little. Onions are going to be okay, but spread them out the best you can. They're not going to get nasty, sticky all over each other. Too bad. But then the best part is the onion broth. So I took that same water that I boiled the onions in, I put in all of my stuff, my ends, my peelings, and all the rubbery part that I didn't want to actually dehydrate. And then I prepared my bottles and drained that stuff out, and then took that juice and threw it back in the pot, so I'm not losing anything that's good here. And then because I have boiling onions, I'm boiling that for probably like 30 minutes, maybe even longer, just really getting everything out of it into that broth I can get. I ended up putting my bottles in the oven just to get them up to heat. When you hear about canning, you're going to understand this. Because I have boiling liquid that's very hot, I want the bottles to also be fairly hot. And that means the water I put them into in my canner, which this is just a water bath, it's just boiling water, it's not a pressure canner. I want that to be, you want them all to be warm or all cold or all hot. They don't have to be, like, you don't have to measure them, but just understand you're just trying not to break your bottles. And they will break. You can put them in the dishwasher too. I just put mine in the oven so that the bottles would come out and I wouldn't have to wait for that thing to cool down and then pour it in and then heat everything up. It's just better to have those in the oven and then start pour that broth in. I added some onion powder and some vinegar to the broth. The reason I added vinegar is because then water bathing is safer. I'm not pressure canning. When you pressure can, that will kill all germs. Water bathing is things that has a little bit higher acid content. So this has already been boiled. I'm adding a little vinegar, not so much that it tastes vinegary, that it's raising the acid level. And notice here, I broke a rule on purpose because, I'm always trying to break everybody's boundaries. Look at that one bottle. I'm canning with a used bottle and a used lid. So, and people say don't reuse lids. But thing is, only thing that matters when canning or water bathing is did you get the right temperature, did you get the right amount of time, and did the lid seal? If it doesn't seal, it doesn't seal. That's why you never keep your rings on. Never ever keep your rings on, right? So it's sealed. It's as good as anything. As long as you do the right temperature at the right amount of time and it seals, you can reuse those little lids 1,000 times. That's all that matters, is did it seal at the right temperature. So see, this is perfect, and it's sealed, and I have beautiful onion broth that I can...
What do you mean by you don't keep the rings on?
Never keep your rings on.
After it's sealed, remember like last week she said like you leave it 24 hours to let it... We left them on the whole time.
Don't, because what happens is, that's how you know it's good, is if it's sealed. So it can, if you have the ring on, what she's saying is the seal, it can unseal because there's something in there, and then it kind of can reseal, and you take the ring off, and you don't know that. So you never, and there's no reason to keep the rings on, never. And I have so many rings, because I buy the cheapest way to get the bottles is when they come with the rings and the caps at Walmart. On the web, for some reason on Amazon, it's like twice as much to get bottles. Just go to Walmart. And so I have all these, I keep getting rings and rings I don't need. You only need as many rings as you can in a day. You don't need any more rings.
My mom bottled all the time.
Yeah.
We always kept the rings on.
It's
Never had any
no,
problem.
not anymore. People will not. It's the wrong thing to do. Do not, because no, that's because
Your
mom was good
no.
at it.
I'm just saying the only way you know it's safe is if it's been sealed the entire time. You don't know that if you have rings on. Besides, it holds all the rust in there and all that. You don't need them. Okay. That's a canning story. Didn't mean to get into that. So I went ahead. My point was, look, this worked just fine. I was just from the store. I didn't pay any money for this. I rebottle all the time. I'm not telling you to, but I'm saying if you do the right temperature and if you do the right amount of time and it's still sealed, it doesn't matter. You can reuse. If it doesn't seal, then use it. So that's what they look like drying. Then I use that, all that stuff left over, went into my little compost thing that goes out to my garden. I got one at Aldi's, has little bags, it has a little thing, keep it on the counter, and I just throw everything in there, my eggshells, anything I'm cutting up, I throw in there, and of course this stuff went straight in there. So nothing went into the garbage except the little netting around the onions. That's the only thing, and everything's being used and going back into food. This composter comes with little bags, and I tie them up and I keep them in the garage, and when I go out to the property, I take them and throw them in my compost pile. These little bags are compostable. That little Aldi's deal is good. It's perfect for someone who has a townhome and no garden. So these are my onions dried. I packed them all up, and here they are. And you can taste them too if you want. And so here's the ring, right? It was sealed because I put one of these in. So these are really good to use. If you have one of those machines that sucks the air out, those are great. But if not, these work fine. You have to buy them on Amazon. I'm going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and pass this around, and you can try these. These are Vidalia onions, which are a very good onion, very high quality onion.
I'm allergic.
I think I'm taking too much time. All right, so moving on to apples. I did Fuji and Galas. I water bath the outside of the apples. I could have used soap and water like some people. I think, not a water bath. I vinegar and water cleaned them that way. And then you want to have some lemon water on hand. Apples, I think, really are worth dipping in lemon juice. This is not pure lemon juice. I mixed lemon and water. You're saying how much? Just, I don't know. Put some lemon in there. It looks milky. That means there's some lemon in there. It's plenty. And that's enough to keep them from going really dark. There's no other reason to do that unless you like lemon flavor. If they go dark, they taste just fine. It's just for visual. I love lemon juice anyway, so I did it. If you're going to do apples, you have to get one of these guys. These are the best things in the world, right? You can adjust. You can see here, you can adjust how much. You can move this away so it doesn't peel it. It just slices it. And there's nothing wrong with drying peeled apples, except you're going to find out why you don't want to in a minute. And you can adjust this so it can peel it more thickly or thinly, and it cores it, and it's just, man, I literally dehydrated these apples so fast. It literally took me 10 minutes to do this. I just machined them, cut it, threw them in the lemon water, and spread them and put them in the machine. It was so incredibly fast. This little machine is not expensive, and you can buy them anywhere. So there they are. You slice it once so you can separate them out. There's my core and my peelings. And, of course, I'm keeping all my core and my peelings in this jar here. Don't throw those away. And so they're sitting in the lemon thing. You can see there. And then one apple was bad, so I chopped it up and put it in the jar because I'm going to make apple vinegar, not apple cider vinegar, apple vinegar. And the fact that there's more apple product to throw in there actually makes it easier to make the vinegar. And it was a bad apple, so I went ahead and threw one apple in. And so you can see me putting the apple in there. So there's my product. That's everything from the store except for the little stickers which I threw in my garbage. Everything else is right there in front of you. Nothing's being wasted here, including the cores. The cores, the seeds, the stems and the stickers I threw out. I didn't have to throw out the stems, but I did. So there's the apples being spread out. See how they fit very nicely in that little spiral? It's literally perfect for dehydrating. If you're going to dehydrate apples, get that little machine. And that's them dried. See how they're pretty good looking? I'm going to pass this out. This is a good thing to store too. If you're going to store it long term, you could go ahead and put one of those little oxidizers in there. But these are good too. Go ahead and have an apple. Those I think are either Fuji or Gala, but they tasted very similar. And that is the easiest thing to do in the world. Not only are they the best tasting things in the world, the kids will eat them. They're super easy. So when apples are on season and they're in bulk, just do this, Now I'm going to make apple vinegar. This is super complicated. You put all the stuff in there, and then you add water and about a teaspoon of sugar per apple. That's it. That's all you do. And you're going to get the healthiest vinegar in the world. And you can do it with any fruit, including vegetables and herbs. You can do the exact same thing. So I did about a teaspoon per apple. If you're doing a full... And
per apple or jar?
No, per apple. Now, I didn't cut up apples. I have cores, so I kind of guesstimated a little bit less. So, and then you don't want to, it'll take about a month before this is actually good vinegar, but it's already starting to get a cool little vinegary smell. And you just kind of move it around every day for the first couple weeks. Just put a stick or a back of a spoon in there. And you have to have air. If you don't have like if you don't have a cloth on top of it or a napkin or a paper towel to let air out, it'll explode. So that's the only tricky part. It's not that tricky. So that's going to be amazing, amazing apple vinegar. When I'm done with all this stuff and I have the vinegar and I can put a top on it because it's not going to be frothing anymore, and this has already started frothing, I will of course compost all this stuff. I'm not going to throw it away, right? I'm going to put it in my composter. And so these are, this is a bigger one I did. And this one, you have to understand, you're going to get less vinegar because you take all this stuff out, right? So probably both of these will probably fit into this by the time they're finished because I'll put them back in here. And then you can keep just a normal top on it. And you guys know you can buy plastic caps to go on all these bottles when you're done, when you don't need. These are kind of, with the little rings, they're kind of a little bit of a hassle to use when you're actually using a bottle like you have in the fridge. Just get those plastic caps. There's only 2 sizes you ever need. And I'll put my plastic caps on those, and I'll have wonderful, wonderful vinegar. You can use vinegar for a million things. Cleaning your hair, cleaning, it's just, and it's super healthy just to drink a little bit. And it tastes a million times better than this, even the good stuff you buy in the store, the organic stuff. This tastes better, and it might be even healthier, I'm not sure. Okay, so that's your vinegar. I did bananas next, because I don't like dried bananas, but summer demanded it. So I went and bought again, I took all those stickers off, but I didn't throw anything away. The first group I did, I sliced them about that thick, and they came out and they were not that great. Summer came down and immediately said those are too thick. And by the time I dehydrated them, she was right. So I went back and bought, I don't have pictures of it, but I made very thin ones. And what I did was I would cut it with, so here's my knife. I would cut it and move it over, cut it, move it over, cut it, move it over, cut it, very thin, and then just slide them right onto the tray like that in a perfect line. Bananas get really dark too, and I don't like that as much. But if you were to dip those little thin slices in the lemon juice and get out, you're getting slime and you've lost them. They're gone. You now have lemon goop. And so what I used was a spray bottle with lemon juice in it. And it was a mix of water and lemon. And just sprayed them. First of all, when I first peeled them, I sprayed the whole bananas because I had a bunch and I didn't want them to go brown. And then as I got them on the tray, then I sprayed them. Couldn't spray both sides, but I could spray them on one side. And that worked just fine. I got that for $1 at the dollar store. Always have these around. So there they are. I went so thin that I could not fit them all up. I had to eat a couple of the bananas and put one of them in. But they came out, and here's my bananas right here. These are the thin ones, and they worked out great. And they're so thin they dried very quickly too. And you can you can get these leathery, or you can dry them so they're chalky. It's your choice. Chalky is going to last longer. Leathery is going to taste a little better. I go for leathery. And the same thing, you can store those with the oxidizers. So all the bananas went into this jar, all the banana peels, including the bad parts of the banana. You don't want to try to dry, goopy brown spots on your bananas. I would throw them in the jar too. I packed them all in. And then I had an overgrown mint on my thing hanging off my balcony. I picked all that mint. When you do mint and banana and make a vinegar out of it, it ends up tasting exactly like lemonade. It's just, not that I'm trying to make lemonade, but it's kind of a cool vinegar to make. And if you wanted to add a lemon flavor to something, a lemonade flavor to something, like something you're cooking or something, you could use it. But mostly, it's just a cool aspect of banana and mint makes lemonade flavored stuff.
Banana pills don't poison? Because I know they're poisonous to eat by themselves.
No, they don't, not in the least.
Uh-huh.
No, and I know a guy who eats all of his banana peels.
Crazy.
Yeah, because there's more nutrition in them, he says. But like you said, that's close to crazy. So here's my mint and bananas. Of course, I'm not using tap water. I just like filtered water on anything. So I have a filter on my fridge, so I just poured in filtered water. And I ended up getting a bigger jar because there was just too much. So this will probably fit in a jar like this. And for cleaning purposes, I'm going to make a lemon and a oregano vinegar, because oregano is very antioxidant. What I did was after I was done cooking, I added vinegar to this, and I just started cleaning the kitchen and my counters and stuff. It was amazing. It kills all the grease, everything, and there's no soapy scum. And the counter, actually, I have granite counters. They actually sparkled. I didn't have the soap scum on it. And then I put some of the bananas in my watering can for my plants. Very, very, very good for them. It puts all that good stuff in the water, and now you're actually feeding your plants, not just watering them. And of course, house plants, you know, you can just, if you don't feed them, eventually they have a hard time surviving. Everything will end up in the compost bin. Any apple things I didn't use because I did a plantain, which was a disaster. I even cooked the plantain to see if I could dry it. It was no good. This is me cleaning the counters with this vinegar, just a little bit of vinegar, lemon juice, and water. And man, I got the greasy part of the oven area, the stove top, and did it, and everything came out sparkling. It was amazing. And I didn't have any soap, scum, or anything. It was just really cool. So that was just a fun experiment that turned out good. Is that it? I think that's it. That's my presentation. Any other questions?
Woo!
Oh, and here's the onion broth. Oh, I showed you that, so yeah. This is going to be great. Imagine anything you're making that takes water that's savory, just use this. I mean, it not only has all the vitamins and the vitamin A's and all that kind of stuff, but it's super flavorful. And whether you're using it for soup or whatever, and I do the same thing with broth. Like when I do the chicken, when I'm canning chicken, I also make a bottle or two of the chicken broth that I use to boil all the bones and stuff. So anyway, any questions?
No.
Okay, great. Thanks.